our webcam here. Most of these webcasts are always little avatars and you can't see our beautiful faces. So we figured we would share that, and then momentarily we will probably pull that back so you can see the slides. So without further ado, let's dive in. All right, you've seen our mugs. So quick introductions here. My name is Dan Golden. I'm President and Chief Search Artist here at BeFound Online. I've been in the search world since 2003. Pretty much all I've ever done is search engine marketing. So I've worked on the agency side, worked at a couple of startups, been on the client side, and currently run our search group here at BeFound Online. And I'm going to pass the torch to Kevin Fields, who is our partner with Google.
Hey guys, so as Dan said, I'm Kevin Fields. I've been in digital marketing for 5 years now, specializing in search specifically. And I started my career in Chicago in the agency world and now work in business development in New York.
All right, so before we dig in any further, wanted to confirm that yes, it is true. We will be giving away 5 Chromecasts to attendees of the webinar today. So many have asked how we are going to do such a drawing. And we've decided we were going to go reverse alphabetical, then alphabetical, and then we decided we're going to put all of the names in a spreadsheet and give it to one of the analysts here to come up with some sort of random way of selecting. So probably by end of day today, if you have not heard from us, then you lose. If you do hear from us, then you win. So I think we've had a smaller list of people that have joined versus signed up, so you have a pretty high probability. So to make sure to stay on and ask questions along the way through, and that might just help your chances. We'll see. So I assume that everybody on the line has also heard of Google. Probably say that word 79 times a day. So I'm going to give a quick introduction on BFO and who we are. Promise this is not going to be an advertorial here. So we are a unique analytics-driven digital marketing agency. We're based in sunny but chilly Chicago. I think we got about 4 inches of snow, but we all somehow made it in here. You probably saw at the beginning with our sweaters. So we specialize in paid, earned, and owned media. We do everything basically other than building websites because we're no good at that, but we're good at all the other stuff. We've been on the Inc. list a couple years running and the top search agency to work for according to Brill Street in Chicago. So again, specialize in paid media, SEO, location management, review monitoring, as well as social, and the lines are blurring between all of these, ultimately trying to help optimize the whole digital marketing ecosystem for our clients. And the biggest piece of that we are seeing in terms of shift here is the eyeballs across devices. What we find is that a lot of these tactics, even between devices, the digital marketing tactics are the same. We're still doing search marketing. We're still optimizing local profiles. We're still dealing with SEO and website optimization for the same platforms, the same content. But again, the usage is switching across devices a lot faster than what we see in the marketplace. Most advertisers are able to keep up. So a quick agenda just in terms of what we're going to go through today. State of the industry and some stats and statistics on what's happening in terms of device shift. We're going to talk about some cross-device measurement strategies and some tips on what to expect with universal analytics. We're going to talk a little bit about what's today and what's tomorrow. And then Kevin's going to dig through measuring the full value of AdWords with some new columns that we all like to see in our reports, the estimated cross-device conversions. And we're going to, most importantly, talk about some next steps and practical pieces of advice that those of you on the line can implement to start getting ready for this in 2014. So we're going to start with a little analogy. This is a real book. It was on the coffee table in my home growing up. I'm going to read the quote. Dr. Anderson tells us all we will ever need to know about the opposite sex. That's a quote from an American man. So the joke about this book and the reason we all found it so funny is you open it up and indeed every page in the book is blank. So this is a perfect analogy in terms of how we've been measuring
Welcome to GoToWebinar, Webinars Made Easy.
All right.
All right.
We just heard a little
We
bit
just
of
heard a
a
little bit of a blip.
so we're switching to our mic and speakers here.
So please chat if you cannot hear us. I'm seeing thumbs up, so I think the audio is working again. So I hope you didn't miss it, because that was my favorite part of the webinar, talking about this great book with blank pages. And hopefully what we can go through today is some tips and tactics on how to start filling those pages with wonderful, knowledgeable data to help inform our marketing decisions. So, as we know, we're living in a multi-device world. We should have put in some sound, like we're living in a multi-device. Okay, sorry.
Go ahead.
We'll save that for the Q&A if you make it that far. So, want to start with another personal anecdote. And these are literally all of the devices that I use every day interchangeably. My Galaxy S3 cell phone, my Nexus 7, which I use at work, my MacBook Pro, which goes everywhere with me, my iPad, which sits in front of the TV, and my Dell old school, giant, ugly, thick desktop, which is where all my credit cards sit at home, and that's where I do all my buying. So for most marketers, trying to decode how valuable each touch point is for me, I'm sure it's an enigma, because I really do all of my buying on one place. I do it from home, but really I'm using browsers interchangeably across all of these devices depending on time of day, where I happen to be standing, and again, this mirrors what we're seeing in the marketplace in terms of the data and overall shifting of consumer behavior. 90% of people use multiple screens sequentially to accomplish a task over time. So again, with information syncing with Google Chrome browser and the tab syncing across devices, it is truly a mess versus where things were a few years ago. So mobile growing. This is a known fact. I'm sure everybody on the line is seeing this in your own analytics. We're seeing this across all of our clients. A lot of variance across industries. So we're seeing some industries, for example, restaurant clients that we work with, that mobile has been beating desktop for the last couple years in some cases. On the e-commerce and retail side, mobile is certainly growing, but is on its way catching up. So one example we wanted to go through is just in the automotive category. When looking at search queries overall, some optimistic numbers here. Traffic keeps growing, impressions are up year over year, queries are up even higher, so the marketplace continues to grow. And then when we peel back the onion a little bit more, and looking at desktops, which is currently where most of the budget is still being spent, we see that impressions are down year over year, queries are down, and clicks are down. Some of the other metrics, CTR, and another important one, if you look in that bottom right-hand corner, is that CPC is up on desktops, and that's because you have more people competing for a smaller slice of the pie, and that's also something that we're seeing across the board, is that advertisers are trying to squeeze as much as they can out of the desktop channel based on current performance and current understanding of performance, most importantly. So peeling that back a little further, you see mobile steadily growing up. So again, this isn't new news. It's mirroring the behavior that we all know is happening. And what we don't see is any sort of peak or any sort of slowing down. This curve is still on that upward slope where the growth is just continuing. Eventually, we're going to start seeing that the growth slow, but we're going to be left with a much different world in terms of device allocations than we've been used to for the last decade. And we see the same thing with tablet. Growth year over year, 60% growth in queries, clicks are up 34%, and CPC on these platforms is also getting more competitive, specifically on tablet, where a lot of retailers are seeing good performance. So taking that up at a high level, it's estimated that about 10% of media interactions are non-screen based, so magazine, newspaper, radio, It's all about screens, and it's all about optimizing for multi-screens. On average, we spend about 4.5 hours a day of our leisure time looking at a screen. Screens of different sizes and different times of the day. And that's another important thing to understand. And again, based on the type of industry you're in and based on the type of stores that you have or the type of consumer behavior, we always see a different mix between when each device is more popular. So Kevin will be going through some tactics on how we can actually use this data within our AdWords programs in order to optimize campaigns and make sure we're showing for the right time with the right message in front of the right consumer.
So here you notice that what once was kind of a traditional path to purchase funnel, which was a one-click experience, digitally at least, is now something like a flight map, and it's making it very, very complicated to measure. And to reference Dan's great book at the beginning, people don't know what to do with this, and particularly marketers. So a lot of times we're making decisions based on weak, not fully comprehensive data. So hopefully what I'm going to speak to later will show you that we are going to be able to give you more information that's going to help make informed decisions that will maximize your budget and get the most back for what you're investing.
This looks like a bowl of spaghetti, doesn't it? That's
it does, yeah, exactly. And that kind of what you said earlier, that's your day is all over the place. And so this is very, very common now. And given that it's not going to stop, it's time to get ahead of it and make sure that you are taking advantage of this data, since it's the first of its kind, actually.
So let's talk about the old ways of measuring traffic and visitors. So we're going to dive a little bit more into Google Analytics before we jump into the AdWords portion. But we look at each unique person on each unique device, and the current methods of tracking, or what we're calling the old way now, is looking at a CID, so assigning a unique ID for each user on each device. So Dan going home and playing on his tablet and cell phone and laptop and then jumping to the desktop looks like 4 people, or 3 in this example. The new way is going to be assigning a unique user ID. So we're tracking humans, 1 human across each of the different devices. So the notion of unique visitors is going to change drastically, and I'm sure once we start looking at it this way, there's going to be some CMOs flipping out about unique visitor counts and dropping, when in fact we're really just starting to actually get an understanding of what the existing behavior is. So that's one word of warning. The metrics are going to change when we start looking at it in the new way. So coming soon, and we'll dig into a little bit more of this, we're going to start to be able to see device overlap, device paths, that's the most exciting for us, and actually looking at acquisition sources. So similar to what we're doing currently with paid search and have been doing for years, understanding the cycle that a customer goes through. So starting on non-branded keywords, starting high up in the funnel, doing some research, drilling down a little bit further, and then finally making that conversion on brand keywords, which typically gets that last click attribution. We can start looking the same way at device performance, and figuring out if people are starting their path on mobile devices and ending that conversion path on the desktop or on a tablet. We think this is particularly important for multi-channel retailers, and especially marketers that are doing more than just digital marketing. So one of the things we find in terms of TV recall is that it drives a ton of traffic to mobile devices. There's plenty of studies out there. You look at the post-Super Bowl articles and reports on the digital marketing side, where we're less concerned with the funniest advertisement, but more in terms of what's happening online. You see the advertisements, you start to see the spike, but most of that is happening on mobile devices. So again, understanding what's happening in the full cycle of marketing. So a recent survey of 2013 ANA Nielsen survey. What keeps you up at night? So the single biggest issue is multi-screen advertising and how you can measure. Everybody's concerned about this, and frankly, it's an onion that nobody's figured out exactly how to peel. So we're going to hold things up momentarily for a quick survey that should be popping up on your screen. And survey participation might or might not influence that magic algorithm on the Google Chromecast giveaway spreadsheet. Just saying. Heather, is it showing? Okay. 10 more seconds. 11 more seconds. All right, survey closed. What were the results?
21% picked understanding mobile conversions, 36% cross-channel attribution, and 43% integrating online conversation data.
Cool. All right. So kind of a little bit across the board. So we will try and cover all of that in the next 48 slides. I'm kidding. There's less than that. We're getting to the point. All right. So some specific measurement strategies. Again, one of the things we see is that marketers are hungry for data. We want to get as much data as possible. Even in our existing Google Analytics accounts, we could spend all day in there parsing through data, looking at information, slicing and dicing it, using advanced segments. What we find is really important is before you start that is understanding what your questions are before you start looking at the data. Because we need to know what those data points are that are actually going to influence the marketing decisions, and what's the data that's out there that we can actually use to drive more revenue, because at the end of the day, that's why we're doing this. So understanding your customer touch points, what's actually leading towards a conversion. Again, that's the age-old marketing question. One of these tools or columns isn't necessarily going to solve for that, but it's certainly getting us a lot closer. Some other stuff from Google Universal Analytics. Who's my ideal customer? There's a lot of enhanced demographic information that's also coming into the reports once we implement the measurement protocol of Universal Analytics. Male or female, age range, interest, repeat customers. Again, a lot of this is not new news to marketing, but new news in terms of data that we're going to have at our fingertips. And then understanding how much time they spend and on what devices, and ultimately what should we do about it in terms of mobile marketing and budgets. So again, we're getting close to solving the answers. What used to be 3 unique visitors is now 1 unique visitor, and we can start to build that attribution model and how we value one specific customer and how they use multiple devices. So again, another example here. So segmenting users by device combinations. One of the things we see is if we look at each device in a vacuum, the numbers can look relatively small. When we start to look at the use across multiple devices, that's certainly where it adds up. It's kind of that 1 + 1 = 3. So again, understanding device overlap is key. So another piece again is the cross-device tracking, is understanding the value of each one of those transactions. Because at the end of the day, if we're going to be able to make marketing decisions, and we'll get to some of the tactics on how we can do that later, we need to understand the value of each of these touch points. Because a click isn't a click isn't a click. So one of the things that we've been seeing in terms of device insights is really just understanding those combinations. So using segments to get the true acquisition value by device, and measuring the value of those clicks by device. So when we talk about marketing, before we can make those decisions, we need to know what a click is worth on mobile versus desktop versus tablet. So this is starting to paint that picture for us. One thing, based on the data that we've seen, and since some of this has come out, I would say probably 10 to 20% of our clients have started to take advantage of Universal Analytics. It's a rolling, we're pushing for it across the board, and we're seeing more clients willing to adopt this, and more advertisers starting to look at this data. Again, everything we're going through today is all very new. But before we start to try and look at mobile as another version of the desktop, or being blunt, as a an underperforming version of desktop traffic. It's important to just take a step back and make sure you understand what people are actually using your mobile site for and what they're looking for on mobile devices. So in a lot of cases for retailers that sell online and in stores, mobile is never going to be the same kind of e-commerce channel. There's people that are using mobile are trying to find your stores, or they're looking for coupons, or they're trying to get directions and find a local store. So that's an important thing. Again, not to expect epiphanies from a lot of this data, and also to make sure that we're looking at each of these different channels based on what your consumers are doing. So having mobile analytics installed, making sure that you're looking at all of those metrics, and some of those metrics are going to look different on mobile devices than what you're currently tracking on your website, and the priorities are different. And ultimately, what we want to do is turn that into an attribution model. So making sure that we understand what's happening from online actions, so coupon views, inventory searches, store locator, and also combining that with conversions, which is typically the focus of direct response marketers. So again, the online orders, service appointments, phone calls, quote requests. I think I covered every vertical with those. Certainly not every advertiser is looking at each one of those, but it's all about finding that attribution model and understanding the full value. So some tangible next steps. So if we did our job here and you're convinced that people are using multiple devices and that it's probably a good idea to measure it, one of the first steps is implementing measurement protocol with universal analytics. That was a lot of words, and certainly we could spend a few hours on a webinar going through all of the details and tactics needed to get there. It's not that hard. That's why you have development teams and partners to help bridge that gap. So we think it's there, it's ready, it's time to jump in. Even if you're doing that now and you need to build up your data in order to start making those decisions. So once you have that data in place, you need to start segmenting users and outcomes by device, and start looking at those device paths. Again, there are some high level, there's market level information on how people are using different devices. And what we see across the board is that everybody's customers are different. So the value of tablet in the research process, we see very extremely wide variance in terms of device performance for each one of our clients. So it all starts with your data. And again, step 3, once you have all this data, it's all about what you do with the data. What insights are you uncovering? And then most importantly, what are you going to do about it once you have it? So without further ado, we're going to pass things over to Kevin to go through some of the new estimated conversion values that are available in AdWords as of last month.
Yes, it's been a slow rollout, but it will be by the end of this month available to everybody. And so my section, to be fair, is quite tactical, so I'm going to try to make it a little bit more exciting. It's really exciting to me and probably anyone who's in this space, but please feel free at any time. I think there's a hand raise option in this webinar. If I get a little over your head or you just want to tell me it's boring, please do. So what's really exciting about what we have to offer is that at this point, Dan made the joke that everyone knows Google, but we really, in the marketplace, both hardware and software, we have a pretty strong hold in the digital world. So there's the Android operating system, which is now the largest operating system in the world, and also specifically here in the US. Also, we have all of our different products that so many users use, which be it Gmail being the largest email product, or YouTube, or the Chrome browser being now the most used browser. We have enough data points that we can pull together a statistically relevant model that we can apply to your account and help you find out what that value is that's not currently being attributed to that first touch point, which which actually is hurting everyone because we're making decisions that are short-sighted and not fully comprehensive. So the way this looks is for those signed-in users, which we have hundreds of millions of users that are signed in across multiple devices, and we're able to take those users, assuming that there are enough of them making these actions relevant to your account, apply this model and find out where are those cross-device conversions happening and how many are there. So if you consider the experience of myself, I know that for travel in particular, I often look up flights or I look up a hotel on my smartphone. But ultimately, I end up converting on a desktop or laptop later. So for the marketer who's seeing that data and cutting it, they're attributing that conversion to the last click, which would be, in this case, my laptop or desktop. However, the most influential touch point for me was that mobile experience that I had that I usually do all my research on. I just don't typically convert there. So that's to say, anyone who has that data in front of them would say, yep, the desktop or laptop is more important. It's where we got the most return. Let's put more budget there. And then mobile ends up being left in the dust, which is not really the right decision to make. It actually ends up hurting you because you're going to start losing share where it's actually more important.
So I think at this point we had another survey planned. So I can raise my hand and say we've been guilty of this in the past because the data hasn't been there. So the question is, how many of you have turned off, slowed down, or pulled back on mobile advertising spend based on the performance not looking how you'd like it to?
I think same rule applies. If you don't participate, that might hurt your chances, right? Okay, so participate.
Looks like we have 2%.
Going once, going thrice.
And we're closed.
Survey closed.
So 69% of you said yes, 15% of you said no, and then there were a third column of I don't know.
All right.
Let's call that yes then.
Pretty good mix.
Let's start out with yes.
So I mean, I think that's very telling that a lot of us have been making marketing decisions and pulling budgets from the biggest area of opportunity based on looking at performance data that we all know is flawed. We've been guilty of it too, because in a lot of cases we've got a certain amount of budget and we got to spend it where we see most of the results. So for us performance marketers, we're trained to move budgets around where we see it working, but again, we can only use the tools that are available to us for measurement.
And so to that point, the newest tool and frankly the best in class at this point would be this new metric that we're going to be, which is currently rolled out to many of our advertisers and should be in your account by the end of this month, is a column that's going to let you put together the traditional conversions that you're already tracking. So those clicks that are very simple to understand. They were looking for flowers online and then buying them on the same device they started on. But we're also going to, this is going to be inclusive now of estimated conversions, which I said based on signed in users, and giving the scope of how large that group of people make up. It's really going to be a very holistic way of understanding how all these different touch points play. So you can think about your online sales, your cross-device sales, the phone calls that are made from your mobile efforts, the app installs, should there be a value that you've applied to this. And then what's very exciting to many of our partners, including Be Found Online, would be the store visits. So many advertisers and marketers are having a hard time understanding what that value is. How do you track that? And that's something I'll speak to shortly, but that's also something that's being rolled out in Q1, which will allow you to really understand which is the most impactful, and then therefore how do you spend your budget the most strategically.
So for those of you that didn't fully comprehend what Kevin just said, this red dot, store visits, is probably the coolest thing we've seen in the last few years in terms of measurement that's going to be at our fingertips. For online companies that do have stores, that's the hardest thing to measure, is what the impact of in-store is based on online. There's been a number of studies. There's the robo studies, research online, buy offline. There's a lot of quant jocks that need to get behind that in order to do that measurement. It used to combine a lot of testing in one market and turn off in the other. To actually have this metric at our fingertips is the holy grail of online to offline attribution. And again, just getting started. This hasn't rolled out across the board, but this is something we're very excited about. We've done a lot of testing with some of our clients using unique coupon codes, and in a lot of cases we're combining a lot of data in spreadsheets. There are some ways to import that data into AdWords, but what we found, especially on the advertiser side, is anytime we're piecing data together to try and draw those insights. It's a lot harder to take that and make actionable changes when the reports aren't where you're actually making those decisions.
Great, and then just to add on to that, well, I'll get to it shortly, but there is some legwork that needs to be done on many of these conversion types. But the good news is that for the cross-device conversion tracking, which we've been talking about for the majority of this conversation, if you currently use conversion tracking in your marketing efforts and you have that set up and implemented in AdWords, this column for cross-device will automatically appear in your account. So we'll start applying our statistical model that I've been speaking to, and you will automatically have this data being rolled into your reporting. It's available both at the ad group and campaign level. I assume that maybe half of you know what that means and half of you don't. But what the good news is that there's transparency here, so you can make even more thoughtful optimizations in and around where you're seeing the most success, because it can vary dramatically by device and by keyword type in any which way you cut it. So what it looks like today, if you were to just have you were a good marketer and you've done everything you can to implement as many conversion tracking types as you could, you now know your online orders from a desktop or laptop, you know how many calls you're getting from mobile devices, and you also have some value against your mobile app installs, maybe average order value, or the lifetime loyalty from an app. You then, if you were to, in this fake example, you'd see that out of these three types of conversions, you're going to say we made 495,000. Those are returned based on these conversion types. The future state, which is actually today, with the exception of in-store, which we'll roll out shortly, you can apply this more holistic view and understand, yes, we had these online orders, yes, we had these mobile calls, but an extra layer there is how many of those calls actually came as a result of a computer or a tablet search. So they obviously didn't call from their computer or tablet, but they found the ad, that was the touch point, and they made a call as a result. The mobile apps, which you just talked about, the cross-device conversions, which also a very critical piece here in the focus of this conversation. And then the last point would be the in-store visits. So many people still go in-store to buy things, but understanding how your online efforts have that impact on that is huge. It's in beta at the moment, but is scheduled to roll out to the masses in Q1. And across all verticals that we've been working with, we've seen strong success, which is evident because otherwise we would roll it out of beta.
So one other thing I would point out here is, there are some estimates in terms of what the true value of all of these conversion types is, and in that case, the onus really is on the advertiser to figure that out and have that understanding. So if you look at mobile app installs, that's something through analytics that advertisers need to understand is what's the value of someone downloading a mobile app. How often do they get used? What does that do to your average order value, or how many people are using the store locators? So coming up with some of these numbers in here is certainly a difficult task, involving a lot of analytics, studying your own data, but ultimately that's going to lead to making those marketing decisions to understand if it's really worth it to run some app campaigns, and if you should be putting more money in mobile because calls convert at a higher rate than web leads. So again, understanding the value of each conversion is a tough thing. It's an exercise we go through with all of the clients that we work with, and in some cases there aren't perfect answers, but we're getting closer based on having more data at our fingertips.
Right, so speaking to doing your homework, best case scenario, you actually do the legwork and you get all of this implemented and have met with your team and you know what the value is across all the different conversion types. You're going to have enough data to make an educated decision on what your computer bid should be and your mobile bids based on performance. So this is, again, getting to a point where maybe it might bore some of you, but I'll walk through quickly what it would look like if you wanted to update your computer bid and also what it would look like if you wanted to update your mobile bid, assuming you had all the data being tracked at that point. So for your computer bid, you have your current bid times the estimated value uplift, which you're going to be able to get from the new column, and then you would add that to your current computer bid, which is what you have it set at as a base. You didn't have this other data at that point, and now what you get is a new computer bid, which let's play it out here and say that your initial base was $2, but you actually had a much bigger uplift than you had anticipated, 73% in this case. And you now have a new bid of $3.46. That means that you're going to have higher positioning. It means you're going to be way more competitive, likely have higher share. And it's informed by this data that's telling you that you should, because it's something that performs very well for you, and you're probably missing a lot of opportunity and ROI because you had a weak bid, just because you didn't have the data to inform a better decision. So the more important one here, based on the conversation that we're having, is what you do with your mobile bid. So let's say that you've determined your mobile click is worth $1.09 to you. Again, this is about that homework and legwork that you have to do to understand what that ROI is and how important it is to you based on the performance. $1.09 for mobile versus $1.21 for your estimated value per computer click. You're going to divide those two numbers and subtract 1 to give you a percentage that you can apply as a bid adjustment. This might not be something that makes sense to everyone, but and please feel free at the end to ask a lot of questions, but this is going to mean that for a certain keyword, let's say flowers in Chicago, if it's going to be on a mobile phone, that you're going to be willing to pay 10% less than you would of your base for your desktop, because you now know that based on the order values, it's actually worth a little less to you than the desktop one is. And this speaks to kind of the granularity of this type of process. You need to make sure that you have down to a keyword level what each of these mean to you by mobile, cut by device, cut by geo. And it seems daunting, but all the data is there, and it's continuing to evolve to allow you to make the decision that's going to put you ahead of the pack instead of still trying to figure it out in a year down the road when everyone else already has. Do you want to speak?
Oh, yeah, I was going to just add a couple of notes on the mobile bid adjustment. I think in this case, we sort of had over the summer with the rollout of enhanced campaigns, all of these tools at our fingertips, and what we didn't necessarily have was all of the data to inform those right decisions. So in a lot of cases, I think advertisers, and us included in some cases, are undervaluing mobile, and in a lot of cases bidding a lot lower on mobile devices and missing out on a lot of traffic. Again, once we start understanding what the full value is, then that's going to lead to more adjustments and frankly more market share, now that we know that those dollars aren't being wasted.
Perfect.
And one other just note is, this isn't something that's across the board. We find certain keywords and certain campaigns have a much higher propensity to be on performing well on mobile. So it's not just about looking at the high level what mobile means to your company. It might mean a smaller segment or a certain segment of your ad campaigns work really well with mobile, and whereas others are still a lot more desktop focused.
Yep, and so use this as a directional guide to at least get started, but then as always in this type of space, make sure you let the data drive the rest of your decisions, and hopefully with the additional data we're giving you, you can make the best decision possible. So in addition to the obvious, once you have this, you want to do with mobile and desktop, there are a lot of other layers here that you would also apply based on your business. So maybe there are certain geos that matter to you based on just how many locations you have in certain markets, or markets that don't actually have your business. You may want to increase or decrease based on that. Also, time of day and day of week. This is a great way to make sure that you are where you want to be at the right time and right place based on your business. So this is going to vary definitely by business. And also you might see that there's performance that's better at certain times of day or a day of week. These are different levers you can pull, and we highly encourage you to take advantage of them. Again, to stay ahead of the pack, because these are things that are available and many marketers are using. So to make sure you're doing that today, not just thinking about doing it later. All conversations we encourage you to have, make sure you're thinking about this and taking advantage of it. So that really leads into the point of optimization. So the best way to do this is, everything that we're talking about is pretty directional, because it's going to vary by business. And if you make sure that you're using this data to optimize, you're going to see that your return is going to increase dramatically. The most sophisticated marketers aren't ones that talk about it, but are ones that actually take it and do something, test, and consider being a leader in the space, and knowing that mobile, no one is surprised. Everyone on this call knows that they've started a research on a smartphone, but ended up converting somewhere else. If you know you do that, and we're going to give you the data to prove it for your account specifically, make sure you're taking advantage of that and trying to be aggressive in that space where others are currently leaving a lot on the table.
Yep, and what we hear from a lot of advertisers and clients that we work with, everybody wants to be at the forefront. Everybody wants to be ahead of what's next. A lot of what was presented today is not universally adopted. I mean, there's certainly some features that Kevin went through that aren't available yet and that are going to become available in Q1. So this is what we think is one of the biggest opportunities to actually get ahead of the competition. There's still going to be a lot of companies out there that are looking at things the way we have for the last 13 years. And this is that area of opportunity. If you can understand cross-device conversions and start making decisions based on that, there's likely going to be a lot of low-hanging fruit that your competitors are staying away from because they simply just don't understand the value. So again, one of the things we've seen in terms of mobile CPCs is it's a lot less saturated than it is in desktop. So there's certainly opportunity areas where you can jump in before your competitors figure it out. And again, we always want to go after that low-hanging fruit.
Great. So just quick survey question. I know we've talked about a lot here, but just for those of you on the line who do currently have conversion tracking implemented, and everyone can answer this though, but if you have it implemented today as it is available, will you automatically get cross-device estimated conversion data, or is there something else that you need to do to make that data available to you? So we'll give you 15 to 20 seconds to answer this. I think it's just a true or false question, but I did speak to this earlier in this section. So,
were you listening?
Yes. Good news is that no one has dropped off. That is a success. I've been monitoring that. So they're listening.
Trying to get.
Great.
All right. So 45% true with 55% false.
Okay.
All right.
Don't want to shame anyone, but the majority is wrong.
The majority is partially wrong. So we had a discussion about this beforehand. This one was a little bit of a trick question. The columns are available universally. They will be available for all advertisers using conversion tracking. One of the things just to take note is statistically significant data. So for some clients that either have really small budgets or register rare conversions, the data is not going to populate unless there is enough statistical rigor behind that to actually be meaningful.
And then to add to that, for us, what we consider statistically relevant or significant is a 95% confidence level. So that also should help you feel comforted, even if you're not getting any data initially because it hasn't built up enough. Know that you're not, because it would be more or less made up. So what we give you is something that is at a 95% confidence level.
And Kevin knows this as being part of our Google team. As soon as these columns were available and the handful of accounts that we weren't seeing data yet, they got the emails and calls.
Right. Yes, everyone, and of course everyone wants this, but we want to make sure that we don't want you making decisions that are not correct. So we're going to give you the actionable data. And speaking of actionable things, the next steps that you should be taking based on what we just talked about, first and foremost, all marketing budgets aside, at least as it relates to buying media, you want to make sure that you're set up properly. So optimize your consumer's experience on every device, because you can do everything and leave this part out and you're set up for failure. So if you're going to have someone going from their mobile phone to their desktop to their laptop to their tablet, you should ensure that that experience cross-device is a good one. Everyone's been on those, maybe it's an airline that you're buying a flight on, and it's not a good experience, and you end up leaving and converting somewhere else just because you really needed to do it on your tablet and it was a bad experience, so you went somewhere else. That could be someone buying a coat, it could be buying flowers. It really doesn't matter what you're buying. You need to have a good experience for them to fulfill that goal that you've set. So if you want to measure that, really important, the second thing is enable conversion tracking across devices. So this is what we talked about earlier, that homework and legwork. This part isn't that difficult. So this is something that should be a given. You should make sure that you have the tracking in place to actually measure these conversions and know where they're coming from. Third, you want to encourage new conversion events. So be it a call or an in-store visit or an app download. Maybe 1, 2, or all 3 apply to you, but make sure that you're considering this so you have, again, a holistic view of where and when these conversions are happening, and that way you're never wasting money. You're actually maximizing your budget and getting higher return. And then lastly, when you have all this data at your fingertips, make sure you're setting bid adjustments based on it. So again, every business is going to be different, but if you see that maybe it's the calls that are happening more frequently than you knew they were, you need to make sure that you're splitting or allocating your budget accordingly. It's going to be best for you and ultimately best for us as well if this is serving you well. So we want to make sure that you're getting enough information and making the most educated decision that you can.
All right, those are the takeaways. So again, don't be scared. This stuff is just starting. Nobody's really figured this out, and even some of the data that you're going to start seeing, my prediction is going to get a lot better over 2014, and maybe we'll have this all figured out in 2015. But until that time, we want to make sure that everybody's looking at all possible metrics and understanding as much as we can, because it's a lot more than we ever have historically. So again, to get started, implement UA, get that set up, start looking at cross-device conversions, and making sure that you're looking at call tracking, day parting, call tracking, making sure that you're looking at all of the different types of data points, and then doing something about it. So I think we're at 51 minutes into the hour, so right on time. We do have time for a few questions if anyone wants to hang out on the line. I think you can chat your questions to Heather, who will read them to us, to which we will respond with perfect answers.
Can they also speak as well if they wanted to?
All right. And we'll take the risk and let you ask a question live on the line.
Maybe we can encourage the first person with.
Not everyone all at once.
I think it says I'm muted.
I think it's because it's the audience is not.
It's unmuted on my side.
All right, so we're not sure if we're muted or not, but I think I'm actually coming through on Heather's microphone. So thank you everybody for attending. We will have a recording of this available if you would like to show it to your friends, family, spouses, bosses, and subordinates. Appreciate you guys for hanging out on the line, and we will get in touch with the few lucky winners of Chromecast, thanks to Kevin and this company called Google. Thank you guys again, and we hope to be in touch with you soon. Enjoy the holidays and have a happy, prosperous, and measured new year.